The biggest risk to your future isn't your competition. It's the distractions you insist on keeping in your life rather than doing the things you know you should be doing but aren't. People delay doing things they don't like for longer than it takes to do them.
There have been so many times in my life where I knew I needed to do something, and then I filled all this extra time not doing that thing. And then the moment I did it, I was like, wow, that took way less time than I thought it was going to take. And not only that, it took way less time than it took me to delay to actually get to this point. And if I had only started with just doing what I was supposed to do, I could have done 4 or 5 other things that I was also supposed to do by this exact same point. And so thinking about it from that perspective, I've tried to eliminate as much time between I think I should do this thing and beginning doing it. And I think you get this positive reinforcement cycle that occurs every time you start. I call it pulling the thread. It's like, I just need to start pulling the thread. And then all of a sudden what feels really unknown becomes very tangible. And you're like, oh, I understand the 6 problems I have to solve to do this big thing. But now I know the problems. And then it feels like you can wrap your arms around it. And then you can start taking it one bite at a time. I used to define power by the distance between thoughts and reality. Meaning, if you think about somebody who's omnipotent, so if God or the God figure would be omnipotent, as he thinks, things are. So there's zero space between thoughts and reality. And so if we want to be more God-like in our lives, the distance that we can shrink between wanting to do something or thinking something should be done and it being done is a direct indication of our personal power in our lives. And so that has helped me basically think, don't be a powerless bitch. Like, just shrink the gap. And I think that's why a lot of my little like personal hacks of waking up and then trying to shrink the time between when I wake up and when I start working, and shrinking the time between one task and the next task. Like, you don't need to take 30 minutes of getting ready to start working. Like, you can just start working, because as soon as you get into it, you start pulling the thread and you're like, oh, here it is. And all of the time that I was getting ready to work, I was just using up my best brain power time on things that truly don't move the needle at all. And so if I'm preparing for a presentation, for example, I might assemble my notes. I might read some stuff about the audience ahead of time. I might read about whoever's, doing the event and learn more about that. I see that as preparation for the thing, which I still see as work. And I think some people, I made a post about how preparation is like everything. I put a lot into preparation. They're like, oh, see, you have a morning routine. I was like, no, I don't need to stand on one foot and do 17 cold plunges and write 6 affirmations, because none of those things are directly related to the work that I'm going to do. And so for me, if it's basically preparation is just a stage of the work. And so if I need to prepare to work, then that's fine, as long as it's related to the work that I'm going to be doing.
Well, we spoke about this yesterday, the difference between focusing on inputs and focusing on outcomes. Right. Yeah. If you optimize for outcomes, the inputs are always optimized. But if you optimize for inputs, you go, what did I actually get done at the end of the day? So the person that does do the productivity rain dance and it takes ages, and everyone's done this. Everyone's got a blank piece of paper in front of them and they end up washing dishes that they never use. Or, the weirdest tasks become alluring because of that. Focusing on outcomes.
So when we brought this up, it was perfect, because I had a whole thing that I was wanting to talk to you about this. So I'm a big proponent of something I call the rule of 100, and I'm not the one who invented this, but it's basically 100 primary actions. So I talk about this within the context of advertising. So you make 100 minutes of content, you do 100 outreach if you're doing outbound, you spend $100 a day on ads, and if you've already spent the money on ads, then you're doing 100 minutes a day of writing ad copy, looking at other people's ads, looking for hooks, and then trying to create more advertisements for your business. And the rule of 100 for most people takes about 4 hours a day-ish. And the thing is that's pure inputs, not output. But I've already taken the time to define what those inputs are that create the outputs. But later on in the book, $100 Million Leads, I talk about the rule of 100 on steroids, which is something that I learned from a guy who owned 13 or 14 really successful gyms, and he called it open to goal. And he said, yeah. He said, my managers work open to goal. And I was like, what does that mean? It's like, so they work open until they hit their goal. And so sometimes that means they hit their goal by noon and they can cut out, or that means that they have to go from 5 a.m. until midnight that night, because that's how long it took them to hit the goal. And so I've seen this across a lot of high achievers across domains. So like I'll keep shooting free shots until I hit 100 free shots. I will run until this happens. I will practice my presentation until I do 0 mess ups, right? Or whatever that output is that you want for quality or quantity. And I think that you have to first figure out what the input is that most closely correlates or tracks with the output you want. And then you jam as much as you possibly can into inputs. Because if I said, hey, go get me 10 customers, somebody, yeah, exactly, you freeze because it's like, well, what do I do? And so then normally people they skew, like behavior skew. So it's all over the place. It's scattered, it's shotguns, sprays. And then they eventually figure out one thing that works. And then it's like, once you hit that, then you just jam that button as hard as you possibly can. And I think that I've been disproportionately successful in different domains in my life by ruthlessly focusing on one input. I mean, even when I was a kid, when I played video games, it's like if you find a spawn point for zombies right before the end of the level, I would just sit there for like 8 hours and just wait for the troll to come up and just slice him again and get my little diamonds and put it in. And I would just do that for hours because I was like, oh, I got to level up my avatar. But I think I play the game of business the exact same way.